And we're also working with, again, like I mentioned, CPS-HR to identify the scope of our TelePerformance 2.0 post-COVID telework platform.
And as Steve mentioned, we're going to be looking at our job descriptions, which we have quite a few of, being a public agency. And as part of the process that we're going to be going through in the near future, we may, and we hopefully will get to a point where we identify which positions or which segments of positions are telework worthy, if you will. But even in saying that, it sounds like a simple proposition, but before, I would just offer that before our managers were even comfortable with the notion that we could, if you will, permanently assign a position to be telework worthy and work from home. That's a huge mental paradigm shift for our managers, right? We're sort of a traditional public agency trying to break out of some molds, but nonetheless, our managers have learned, I would say, as a result of the optics survey results and the work that Steve's doing with the SWAT teams, that our employees are trustworthy when they're working at home. Our managers ask for feedback from employees at the start as to, hey, what are you doing? Because there was a natural inclination to kind of think, is that person going to be at home doing the laundry or facilitating the studies of their children that are now in their care for schoolwork? It's not that we think the worst of employees, but our managers are responsible for output, for productivity, pandemic or no pandemic. And so nonetheless, I guess by saying that we're at the point, we're ready to even identify position descriptions as telework worthy, or eligible, I should say, our managers have learned it's a viable option. Employees are trustworthy and are productive while at home.
Was the effort to kind of move into this teleperformance or telework initiative, is this, based on HR's sort of push, or is it your county leadership, or where did the real direction and I guess initiative start? And then I guess the secondary question to that is, how did buy-in happen from the opposing party, if it was from one or the other?
We have a very progressive county executive officer, and she was looking at the telework to be used as a solution to the power shutoffs that we have here in Northern California due to the fires. Early on during the pandemic, it was evident that we simply couldn't congregate like we did, pre-COVID in our offices. So we moved pretty quickly to get people from the brick and mortar office locations to home. I think because we had a plan and some of the risk management and some of the bandwidth issues and safety and workman's comp and those issues were developed already in the plan that we had created, we were fairly quickly to move to that. Our computer systems aren't set up even to this day to really monitor productivity in the sense that some commercial and private organizations do. And so it was really more relying on our soft skills. And that was probably the biggest movement, was encouraging the managers that weren't comfortable without seeing somebody in their office if their employees are being productive. And looking at productivity, not necessarily in the 8-to-5 model, because COVID for everybody presented challenges that you traditionally wouldn't have at work. Doing things at home, helping your children with schoolwork and such like that. And so I think the optics survey that we did, and for those of you on the line, the optics survey was a survey that we did early on with CPS-HR that really addressed some of the issues and identified how well we were doing with telework and teleperformance. And the survey showed that we were productive. We've had some issues, like most organizations have had, with employees not being as productive as they were. But for the most part, it's been extremely rewarding experience, and our employees have thrived in this environment. And so it was very easy to back to your question, to show that the managers that weren't in support of this, that it definitely works.
Jason, I'm not able to hear you.
Sorry, I did the famous mute. I'm on mute thing and talking.
Okay.
So there's another question that came in that said, in currently this person's county, there's no plan to offer telework moving forward once they return back to the office, and that's creating an issue where a lot of people within the organization are looking for other jobs that will allow telework. And do you what's your take on recruitment and retention due to this problem? And isn't that something that you're actively looking at to make sure that you do retain the best and brightest?
You know, we are keeping tabs on our employment market, right? And we compete for talent, not just in the county and public sector, but in the private sector. And, you know, COVID has changed the global landscape of work, and telework is more common than it was before. And so if we were not to allow telework in some format going forward, we would not be a relevant employer, and we would expect our employees to vote with their feet and leave the organization because they want a more flexible work environment. We're not sure if post-COVID, if we're going to have positions that are 100% telework. That may be something that we look at in the future. We're looking more probably leaning towards a hybrid model, a 50-50 or a 60-40 type of a model, maybe a 70-30, 70% in the office, 30% at home, integrating it with a flexible schedule, because we see, and Nevada County didn't have a flexible schedule policy until, ironically, February of 2020. We did about a year-long process of really diving into that and developing that program that Susan led that work group successfully in. And we're looking now at merging our flexible schedules, our 980, our 410s. We do a 494 where a person can take a 4-hour day, a 4-hour work day once a week, and merging teleperformance into that as another option, because we see it as another flexible schedule option. And I think it's crucial for us to be a employer of choice to offer a teleperformance option to our employees. Exactly what that looks like is yet to be determined, but more than likely at least a hybrid model.
And I'll add, oops.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Okay. That's the one thing about the world that we live in now under technology. It's difficult not to overtalk one another, so I apologize. But I will say to the point just raised, I've had verbatim comments from new hire employees who are just basking in the ability that they have for a flexible work schedule or the ability to work from home. One person in particular works from Reno, Nevada, which is over, for those of you not familiar, it's over a mountain range on the other side of our county, and they telecommute from Reno, Nevada to do their work for us in this state. So they're in a completely different state. But the point being that the direction is headed toward employees continuing to want work-life balance. And we're wrestling with what will the world of recruiting in this remote workforce look like? And what are some of the issues that we might face if we encounter an employee who lives in a different state? There's a lot of sticky wickets in that whole area. So we're looking at that, especially because we border at least the state of Nevada. So we're sort of confronted with getting employees from another state quite frequently.
And I think too, the landscape. So COVID and teleperformance accelerated our ability to digitize and create efficiencies in our business processes, not only internally, but to our external customers. And the way in which we deliver services to our customers had to change, like most of us on this call realize. And so I think that there has been a paradigm shift, the demarcation of which was when COVID was really affecting us almost a year ago in March. And the expectation of our customers have changed. And so our delivery of services will, of course, continue face-to-face. But I think it'll diminish. I think that our contractors that want to submit plans for review, that can do that electronically and not stand in line. If you want to record a document, you can make an appointment and not stand in line. And there's so many efficiencies. I really think that the way in which we conduct our business post-COVID has changed. And for us to be relevant in the market, we also need to recognize that that the geographic boundaries of employment opportunities have diminished, and we're competing for talent not just out our front door, but at least within the state of California potentially. And if we want to attract the best talent, we really need to be able to harness that. And telework is one way, teleperformance is one way that we can do that.
So I'm going to read a few comments here that were just sent in, and I don't know that these are anything to really elaborate on, and it's different people's perspective, right? Mentioning that telework is something that's going to make agencies more competitive. Robert mentioned recent surveys show 1 in 3 employees would consider quitting or leaving if they lose flexibility, which I believe. I know in our employee engagement services within CPS HR, we did a COVID-19 sort of overarching survey, and again, it showed remarkable results of how people feel about telework. And then mentioning about the governor has proposed telework and rescue and bring in more overhead by 5%, and that's a California thing. So in the state of California, Gavin Newsom has taken a pretty significant stance on telework and being able to reduce expenses. But other places in the country, Texas, Florida, it's going to be very different, right? And so really the goal in this discussion is how to bridge the fact that you have you have your workforce that is looking for this flexibility, flexible schedule, and then you have policies and politics and everything else going on that may or may not be in alignment. And so it's an interesting problem moving forward. Steve, I know that you always are sort of working different contingency plans and plans for other things and really innovative. What are the things that are top of mind now, given that you've created this transition to telework, teleperformance, and have this open mindset within your organization that you're looking at to continue to maximize performance metrics within Nevada County?
So we are looking at our performance management system. It's one of the areas that we'd like to revamp. And then last year, so what we try to do is we try to do a year of discovery and a year of implementation. And I'll kind of walk through that. Last year, Susan led our recruitment and retention year of discovery. We hired an intern who was from Chico State, which is a California State University here in Northern California, who is working in HR, which is a degree in HR, and we canvassed public and private organizations to see what the best processes for recruiting were. And it took us a year. We interviewed all of our staff at different layers of the organization, the HR staff, the hiring managers, new employees, our senior executives. And we had 3 areas that we really wanted to look at. We wanted to increase the collaboration of our hiring managers and our HR staff. We wanted to reduce our time to hire, which Jeff had mentioned earlier in the intro. And we also wanted to tie competencies to hiring the right candidate. And so we've implemented this spring the time to hire, which we targeted 60 days, and I think our average is 46. So from the time that a department manager gets the authorization to do a hire, 46 days later, we should be writing the offer letter. And that's huge in government processes. The second piece to that, to make that happen, is what we call concurrent processing. We did a Lean Six Sigma review of all of the processes that we used to hire a candidate, and we did everything concurrently. And so that the milestone of that program is we sit down on day one of that process with the hiring manager, and we go over the entire strategy of that recruitment. And it forces the hiring manager to have skin in the game, to really identify their recruitment strategy. And we even go so far as we pick the hiring panel, we work on the occupational or the interview questions, and we pick the interview date, which we advertise in our announcement. So we were able to get down to 46 days. The third step is a competency-based recruitment, where we look at competencies and fits more so than a minimum qualification or an MQ. And so that is all being implemented this year. We're cascading those competencies into our performance management system. And Susan's working with another intern going to Sacramento State College, degree in HR. And she's working on that performance management system. Our current performance management system is extremely long. It's an online system, but the forms, if you were to print them out, are 15 to 17 pages. And we think that a lot is being lost in the development of this performance evaluation, and we want to move it more towards the competencies, building goals, and inspiring our people to be the best innovative employees. And so that's one process that we're using, and we use that problem solving and strategic planning to really address any of the issues that we have. And you know, I don't know what the next crisis is going to be, but there's going to be a next crisis. And so, you know, planning for that, at least mentally, it gives you the agility to respond quickly and with purpose.
So Susan, as kind of the implementer for a lot of these initiatives, how does this feel when these huge changes are happening almost so fast that you can't even turn around, and then there's another one, right? It would feel like to me, man, I just got over this telework thing, and now you want to do what? Come on, Steve. Come on.
Right.
Like, how do you handle that? How does that get operationalized within your organization in a way that's accepted and really adopted to help move forward?
I think many of us are in a role to be listening to our leaders above us who are very strategic and I would almost say amorphous in their ideas. They're great ideas and they're exactly what the ideas should be that we need. But then the actuality, the planning of it is falling to us. So we have to take these big, beautiful ideas and make them work in an organization. Sandwiching our obligation to be strategic and buy into that with our responsibility to make it happen. I often, my first line of response to this is to say that every year HR and probably the organization and then each department within our organization, in particular HR, has sort of its own strategic meeting where these are the big sky issues, and these are the projects that we'd like to identify as being important this year, next year, whatever. So we at least have some semblance of sanity in the plan. And Steve has, I will say, with professional affection, monitored his drive to meet our needs. He, instead of both developing and implementing in like the same small period of time, we will spend a bit more time or a year on developing and researching and getting people ready, plowing the ground, and then the next year implementing. So I think that's a perfect example of how we sort of balance the drive for implementing things with the actual staff that we have and the time that we have. So we have a model that we run these things through. And that's how we are able to tick off project after project. I also am very cognizant of when I hear the big sky ideas, my immediate reaction is one of, how can I support my staff in operationalizing all these tasks? So I will replicate the process that I just went through above with the strategic meeting with staff and communicate and air the issues, not just operational issues, but personality issues. Everybody has a different personality type or need. And so let's raise those issues to get over all that angst and those obstacles so that we're on the same page when we go to implement. People usually find success in that initial meeting and they're ready to embrace the change and whatever it takes. And I think supporting our staff goes a long way toward helping us operationalize one after another project, because they feel that their needs are going to be met throughout the process. Their voice is going to be heard. So I feel that we do a good job of plowing the ground with communication throughout the process.
And I think too, the communication, we're not afraid. We purposely bring interns on because we want the unbiased viewpoint, right? They're new to the organization. They've never worked in a county HR before. They do have the foundational educational background in those areas. And they have an acute sense of, this doesn't make sense. Why would you do it this way, right? And then we allow them to work with all levels of staff. And we want that communication, like Susan indicated, even if the communication is uncomfortable, even if the communication doesn't align with what it is that we think that we want to do. We want to ensure that we've eliminated as many blind spots as we can, and then we make the best decision for the organization, even if it isn't the decision or the direction that we initially thought that we wanted to go in. So the ability to course correct is I think key. And a continuous process improvement, it takes away the pride of, this is what I built and I don't want to change it. And it changes it from, we always want to ensure that what we've created is the best and most innovative. And that takes some commitment, and our staff has risen to the challenge quite well.
And I think one of the key things that we've begun to do is, as Steve mentioned in our recruitment process, we wanted our managers to have skin in the game. And another attribute that we were hoping to have success in is to have our own HR recruiting staff to feel more ownership and more like a strategic business partner in the process. Those skills, both parties, the development of those skills on both parties' side, it was the hardest part. Quite frankly, I created a timeline and all the managers had to jump to it in order to get their recruitment done on time. And they enjoy doing it that way because they got their list of candidates faster. It was self-serving to them. But were we successful in having them develop those softer skills of ownership on both sides? So I bring that up because we've recognized in our own office that we need time. We need to carve out time in our day for us to develop some of those harder skills that weren't quite as well developed in our recruitment time to hire pilot, but that we still want to continue to emerge with as a defined skill set. So we set aside an hour a day for staff to be strategic business partners. And we force the project development, the project facilitation to take a slight back seat to that. So Steve has, successfully, may I just put it candidly, put his money where his mouth is. He's let us have the time in the day to develop those harder to develop skills so that we can continue to roll out these innovative projects.
And so we did two things with that. We empowered our HR technicians to make decisions that typically were made by the HR director or at Susan's level. And we eliminated those and we empowered them. But really, the most important thing with this is that 80-20. If you're not spending 20% of your time thinking of the future and bettering your processes, I would argue you're wasting the other 80%. And so we've created a staffing model that allows that 20% to give them, and we've reduced and leveraged some of our systems. One example that Susan implemented was employee self-scoring, and we realized that we were spending 100% on our time on 70% of the candidates that we would never interview. And so we reversed that. We took some operational risks, and instead of manually going through all of these questions and the resumes. We've let our systems do that so that the HR technician in our office, that strategic business partner, can spend more of that time solving the strategic problems and really identifying those key issues that they need to work on. It's a teamwork approach for sure.
So we had a question come in about, buy-in, and specifically this person mentioning, buy-in from workers' comp and risk management. They said theirs isn't opposed to telework, but the executive management doesn't support it yet. And how do you kind of socialize? I mean, whether it's either in telework or any major change that you're making within the organization, how do you socialize that throughout the organization so that there's buy-in there? What tactics do you?
I always like to use the YFM. What's in it for me, right? If you approach every problem and every situation and looking at the other person, Sun Tzu, the art of war, know your enemy. What is it that the other person wants, and how can you provide that in a solution that meets or exceeds their expectations, but also socializes your goal for change and be a change agent? And so I think it's important that if you can solve tomorrow's problem by increasing, your contemporaries or your colleagues' productivity or ability to do their job, it's a much easier sell. And so for the counties and cities that aren't looking at teleworking, they're deferring that issue for a later day. And the net effect of that's going to be is they're going to lose quality candidates. More than likely, you're going to lose the candidates that have the ability to get paid more and go someplace else that would have stayed with you given the flexibility. You're not necessarily in all cases going to lose your mediocre or poor performing employees. And so my advice to them is, if you don't embrace what global change has happened, it's like being I always use this example, making stagecoaches in 1910 and refusing to build car bodies and go into that age. At some point, you're going to be irrelevant, right? And so we in public or private sector want the best and brightest talent. And sometimes you have to meet that talent where they're at. And it may be uncomfortable. And so to not look at telework or teleperformance as, I'm not comfortable, how are we going to do this? Embrace it for what it is. And so the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats, that the SWOT, SWOT, is a process that we use. And I look at these challenges and threats as opportunities to move forward. And that's the key, is how can you identify the benefits to the organization that a threat presents and socialize that idea so that they have buy-in, not forced on them, but that they see it over a slow integration of the socialization, that they come to you and want more of it. And that's really what we've done in Nevada County. There are things that we've started that people were at least initially resistant about, and we continued. We knew that we were on the right track. We took the feedback, and then people come back and then they want more of it. They want more of what we're doing, not because we're forcing it on them, but because we were able to socialize it in a way that showed the benefits to them.
And the other thing that we started with was a survey. Our CEO is very interested in communication. When she took the office, she had 3 tenets that she published. One was communicating, one was customer service, and one was creating opportunity for staff development and employee enrichment, if you will. And she is very interested in feedback. And so she conducted a county-wide survey. And one of the high response marks was that employees wanted more work-life balance. This was 3 years ago now. Well, she listened to that feedback, and that is what was the seminal movement toward flexible work schedules. So we incorporated flex work schedules in an organization that was very traditional with their mode of work, if you will. So I think organizations out there who are wrestling with sharing or promoting the idea of doing something uncomfortable to their senior management, If there's willingness to do a survey, let me just unashamedly tout CPSHR here. CPSHR has some wonderful surveys that can get at that kind of data and to present to the senior managers to help them make decisions at their own pace.
And when you get the survey, don't hide from the data that you're uncomfortable with. There is a comfortable feeling of being uncomfortable that provides a vehicle and a necessity for change that people really should embrace. I've seen people look at the data and try to talk it away as that doesn't really apply to us, or it only is this portion. I think you need to address it head on. And if it's uncomfortable, if you're feeling uncomfortable, you're probably heading in the right direction, because those are where your blind spots are at. So don't fight the urge to put it away. I mean, fight the urge to not deal with you being uncomfortable, and face it head on. I think that's the best advice. And we work for a wonderful management staff. Our CEO and assistant CEO are very innovative. And I think that what Susan and I and the rest of the HR team bring to the table is a way to provide a path that meets all the objectives. We're very clear that we're trying to make sure that we identify the goals and objectives up front. And then we check in on it. When Susan created the flexible work schedule, even when we implemented it, there were 90-day check-ins. And at the 1-year point, we did another survey, and she wrote a report at the end, right? And so we realized that we need to continue to look at that. We want to stay on the leading edge. And one of the things that we did early in 2020 is the HR department is we created an HR Vision 2020. And part of that, a lot of the things that we're talking about, we implemented. But we told our staff that we wanted to be the best HR office in California, not to squash our other HR offices, public and private, but to collaborate and bring them along with us. We feel that our ability to create change in our own environment, our own organization, is the collaboration of others, and we are very collaborative outside of Nevada County in a lot of different ways.
Unmute here. So we're getting close to the witching hour here. I have a couple other questions. Maybe we can do quick answers on them, and then I want to just kind of wrap it up with some advice for people out there. But how do you handle if people aren't local with the taxes and payroll and all that other stuff when you're talking about this, I guess, distributed workforce?
Yeah.
What's the process there? What do you do?
So that's a great question, and it could be a webinar on its own, but I'll be brief here. We're tackling that. We do have people that work out of state in Reno because they live at a commuting distance to California. There are a lot of implications on workman's comp rules and taxes and what's the rate of pay should be. And so those are exactly things that we're looking at this year in part of our post-COVID teleperformance policy. And even if we don't have the solution immediately in this year, we're going to keep looking at it, because I think the future of teleperformance is going to be agnostic to geographical boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And we will have to be in that space, and we'll have to figure out how to be in that space. And my hope is that we figure out how to be in that space before we need to be in that space, so that we can be responsive to our managers and to the county and hire the best talent, even if they don't live within our state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really need to. In my neighborhood alone, a house went for sale, and it was sold very quickly by a couple that moved up from the Bay Area, and they live here in beautiful Nevada County, which is an alpine county, so it's lovely, pine trees and lakes and whatnot. And they work in the Bay Area. They work remotely for the Bay Area. So we're, I believe, going to see more and more of that in the reverse too. Some people who live in Napa County are not going to want to move necessarily. That's a beautiful county in and of itself. So, but as well, we're going to have people out of state, and so we're wrestling with the details. But that's I'll stop there, Jason, because I know you have another question.
Let me see here. As far as fairness and handling fairness within the workplace, if staff, could potentially resent their positions if it doesn't have that work-life balance or work from home flexibility based on the type of work they do. Do you have strategies or tactics to kind of keep employee engagement up and keep them happy when they might feel otherwise?
We do. One of the things that our CEO asked us to do with the competency-based recruiting model and some of the work that Susan's done is we have looked at competencies in non-traditional lateral positions or different fields. We feel that there are 4 or 5 different occupational series within our county, office assistant being one of them, that has a lot of the same attributes as a 911 dispatcher has. And so we highlight those opportunities for our internal staff. We want someone to come to Nevada County and spend their whole career here if that's what they want to do. And they may do it in very different job classifications. And so now that we have telework, now that we have flexible schedules, if those positions are something that they would like to make a career change, we want to develop those competencies so that non-traditional lateral movements or career changes can happen more frequently, and we can highlight those transferable skills. That's one thing that we're doing within Nevada County.
Yeah, and we listen. If we have a person complain because they, for example, they work in the sheriff's office and they're admin support staff, but the admin support staff can't necessarily always work from home. And so once in a while, we'll get an off-the-cuff comment like, oh boy, how sweet it would be to work from home. We will listen. We'll have we'll talk with the person, and I'll work with them to explore what their feelings are and what solutions there might be, and have them explore maybe why their personality prefers working at home, or go through a variety of steps to help them adjust to the fact that they need to work in the brick and mortar building. Or as Steve said, hey, if it's really that important to you, let's consider other options. So we help them settle, it's maybe an adjustment issue, and look at all the benefits. Some people are extroverts, and so they just love working in an office. And anyway, we deal with it as it comes up and help them adjust to it or consider other options. At the end of the day, that's what they're paid to do. And so, recognize it, accept it, or here's some of the other options.
So we're about 4 minutes out, and I wanted to kind of end this with, I know a lot of different organizations on the call are in a different place with their journeys of sort of innovative approaches, telework, teleperformance. Given that and taking that in mind, if you could give each one of these organizations just one thing to start with to help up their game, let's say, what would you kind of convey? And with the scope of that, they're not where you may be on the timeline of all this.
I think the first thing that you want to do is listen to your employees. If I had to choose one, listen to your employees, because they're the pigeon in the coal mine. They're the bird in the coal mine. They're going to give you their feedback is really important, and you should consider altering some of your policies if you can to what their demands are or requests are.
That's exactly what I'd say. Talk about the elephant in the room. It is a topic on everyone's mind because they've had to be working from home, perhaps as a result of COVID. So the topic isn't going to go away just because hopefully COVID is behind us. So it's the elephant. Talk about it, broach it, bring it up, create a work group around it, explore it, have something to say about it. It's a surprising mix of reactions that you'll get. At least discuss it.
I'm happy that both of you said that unprompted. If anybody on the call is interested in getting a teleperformance survey, please put it in the comments. I have Jeff Hoy across from me saying, hey, for everybody that makes a mention that they're interested, we'll do a drawing. We'll do one for free. So please put it in there if you're interested. We really do want to help the different organizations, and it's nice to have that feedback from both of you guys on how important that is. Unscripted when I already had that in my back.
You didn't pay us to say that.
No, they didn't.
I know. That's wonderful. I'm glad. I'm glad it worked, and I'm glad it helped Nevada County. And it really is a pleasure to learn from both of you and see kind of a best in class organization. I've had some comments come in the chat and different participants saying that they want to work for you, Steve. So apparently your leadership is being transferred across.
Let me give them the down low. No,
Yeah, I know. They don't know what they don't know. But it is awesome to learn from you and to see how you approach this in a very systematic and innovative way for the public sector. So thank you. Thank you very much. We look forward to maybe more conversations like this in the future.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yep. And if anybody else has any follow-up questions or, just anything about how to up the game of your organization, like Nevada County, please put them in the comments. We'd be happy to help you. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the week. And it was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.